Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. Okay, I always, like, at the last second when I'm saying that daily, I'm like, is it 2023? That seems crazy. I'm still not writing 2023 on my checks, so I don't know. I mean, I'm not writing any checks. That's really the basic premise of the whole thing. Anyway, plenty to go on today, because lots of things are happening, and they're happening all over the place. It is Tuesday, and we'll see if the stars align for, the stars sort of aligned for Aurora Borealis the other day. It was just one star involved in that one. And we'll see whether the stars align today to have a moment to chat with Joan McCarter later in the program. You know, anything could happen. You could find out that there's another Supreme Court justice who has ethics problems, for instance. That's the late-breaking news from this morning. By late-breaking, I mean I just saw it, and I don't know how long it took to get to me or to you. But let's see. By now, we should have safely parked in pocket Politico's blockbuster story, which I don't know if it's an exclusive or... Yeah, it is. Look, it says exclusive right at the top in red letters. That's why we haven't heard about it yet, because we haven't read Politico yet this morning. It is dated today, 4:30 a.m., though. So if you got up nice and early, you could be sure to know the news before everybody else. I think that's probably the lead story of the day. We're going to make it the lead story of the day anyway. And I came to my attention, of course, through the radical lunatic left Waldo Jackwith saying this morning, I don't know, this is, what did he say? It's kind of like it's radical, it's maybe extreme and bombastic. Right here it is. Here, perhaps it's a bombastic and partisan position to take, but I think it is bad to have Supreme Court justices who are above the law and appear to be accepting bribes. I am against it. That said, he also followed that up with, I forecast that we're a few months away, I would say probably a few hours away, from it becoming a Republican talking point that it's actually good for Republican Supreme Court justices anyway to accept bribes and to be above the law. This is what the founders intended, etc., etc. And, probably, I would think that's, around the corner. And, argues again in favor of, court reform in general, not just expansion of the Supreme Court. But, okay, we'll see whether anybody's open to it. And, so it's flop sweat day for Dick Durbin to worry about, not doing anything about these problems. Let's go straight, though, to Politico's exclusive law firm head. Yeah, that's what they used to call him over on the playground. Law firm head. This law firm head guy bought Gorsuch-owned property. That's a very tame version of the headline. What lies beneath? Lies beneath, I guess, the headline. The subheader says the Supreme Court justice did not report the identity of the purchaser, whose firm had numerous cases before the court. Yikes. And look, they didn't even capitalize court in this sentence anymore. That's how little respect the Supreme Court gets these days. Heidi Przybyla, how does she say that? I don't know. But we've definitely read her stuff before. Here's what she's got this time. For nearly 2 years, beginning in 2015, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch sought a buyer for a 40-acre tract of property he co-owned in rural Granby, Colorado. Couldn't find a buyer. No one wanted this land. The market had spoken. No one wanted this land. 9 days after he was confirmed by the Senate for a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court, the then circuit court judge got one, that is to say, a buyer for this 40-acre tract. Wow, isn't that strange? The chief executive of Greenberg Traurig, one of the nation's biggest law firms, that's what do they call them? Law firm head? That's the guy. Law firm head has offered to buy this tract of property after 2 years of seeking a buyer and finding none. In the whole world, nobody wanted this land. But suddenly, the chief executive of Greenberg Traurig did, and Gorsuch owned the property with two other individuals. But hey, They all got rich off of this one. This was, again, purchased by the chief executive of Greenberg Traurig, one of the nation's biggest law firms with a robust practice before the High Court. On April 16th, 2017, Greenberg's Brian Duffy, now we have identified the person for you, put under contract the 3,000-square-foot log home on the Colorado River and nestled in the mountains northwest of Denver, according to real estate records. Yeah, that's right. Brian Duffy suddenly needed a log cabin outside of Denver. He and his wife closed on the house a month later, paying $1.825 million, according to a deed in the county's record system. By the way, there's actually more characters in writing out $1.825 million than there is just adding an extra comma and 3 zeros at the end. But I don't know. I guess that's just not the way we do things in this country anymore. So, let's see. Yeah, according to a deed in the county's record system, $1.825 million. Gorsuch, who held a 20% stake, reported making between $250,000 and $500,000 from the sale on his federal disclosure forms. Gorsuch did not disclose the identity of the purchaser. That box was left blank. Not redacted. Left blank. Since then, Greenberg Traurig has been involved in at least 22 cases before or presented to the court, according to a Politico review of the court's docket. They included cases in which Greenberg either filed amicus briefs or represented parties. In the 12 cases where Gorsuch's opinion is recorded, he sided with Greenberg Traurig clients 8 times and against them 4 times. In addition, the Denver-based lawyer for Greenberg represented North Dakota in what became one of the more highly publicized rulings in recent years, a multi-state suit which reversed former President Barack Obama's plan to fight climate change through the Clean Air Act. Gorsuch joined the court's other 5 conservative judges in agreeing with the plaintiffs, including Greenberg's client, that the Environmental Protection Agency had overstepped its authority by regulating carbon emissions from power plants in the decision that makes it more difficult for the executive branch to regulate emissions without express authorization from Congress. Duffy, who in addition to serving as CEO, is chief of Greenberg's entire 600-lawyer litigation department, said he has never personally argued cases before Gorsuch or met the justice socially. "I've never spoken to him," Duffy said. "I've never met him. I just bought his cabin." Once he learned Gorsuch was among the owners, Duffy said he cleared the sale with his firm's ethics department. So he took care of that, but Justice Gorsuch just didn't. Gorsuch did not respond to inquiries about the sale, his disclosures, or whether he should have reported Duffy's identity as the purchaser. Supreme Court rules do not prevent justices from engaging in financial transactions with people with interest in court decisions, but Gorsuch's dealings with Duffy exposed the weakness of the court's disclosure procedures. I mean, basically, they're saying the current rules don't require it. So he's not violated any rules, but the rules are so weak that who cares what the rules require? You should be doing much more. The rules should require disclosure. For instance, in reporting his Colorado income, Gorsuch listed as his source only the name that he and his 2 co-sponsors gave themselves, Waldman Group, LLC. The report didn't indicate that there had been a real estate sale or a purchaser. Such a sale would raise ethical problems for officials serving in many other branches of government, but the Supreme Court sets its own rules. It has largely left justices to make their own decisions about when and how to report outside gifts and income. Justice Clarence Thomas, maybe you've heard of him recently, that he's currently under scrutiny for accepting lavish trips from a GOP billionaire donor, Harlan Crow, who also purchased 3 Georgia properties from the justices. Oh my goodness. Wow, the same problem. Thomas did not report the property sales. Of the vacations, Thomas said he had been advised that, quote, personal hospitality from close friends need not be disclosed. Or personal hospitality when the friends aren't there, but they lend you their super yachts and fly you around or whatever, things like that. Senate Judiciary Chair Dick Durbin, a frequent critic of Supreme Court ethics rules, sent a statement responding to Politico's inquiry about Gorsuch's sale of the Colorado property. And I guess here it is. We have seen a steady stream of revelations regarding Supreme Court justices falling short of the ethical standards expected of other federal judges and of public servants, said Durbin. The need for Supreme Court ethics reform is clear, and if the court does not take adequate action, Congress must. The Senate Judiciary Committee will be closely examining these matters in the coming weeks, said Durbin, who has asked Chief Justice John Roberts to testify next month on the court's ethics rules. Kedrick Payne, director of ethics at the Nonpartisan Campaign Legal Center, said he believes investments in LLCs require more details than the justice includes in his financial disclosures. The transaction also appears to also require naming the buyer. The public has a right to know that justices will fully comply with disclosure rules instead of providing only a tiny peek into their financial disclosures, he said, noting more facts are needed to distinguish whether it's a disclosure omission or violation. The center was founded by a Republican former chair of the Federal Election Commission. Unlike Crow, who bought properties from Thomas, Duffy says he is neither a friend nor a confidant of Gorsuch, but he is one of the nation's most powerful attorneys, if that matters. His Greenberg bio describes him as a true working CEO, God bless America, and says he, quote, focuses his practice on trial and appellate work in the class action, employment, energy, commercial contract, and product liability areas, serving as counsel in high-profile cases throughout the United States. So, nothing. At the time of the sale, Duffy had headed Greenberg Traurig for about a year. A search of his contributions to political candidates revealed that they went primarily to Democrats, including Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. He contributed the maximum amount allowable for individual donors to Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, though he also made contributions in the past to Republicans such as former Senator John McCain and a GOP New York City mayoral candidate Joe LaHota. I don't remember him at all. But anyway, the Duffy family has long resided in Colorado. That's nice. That's good. I mean, that's actually, removes a certain amount of suspicion. Like if he was based in D.C. and this was his 19th vacation home, I'd say, well, I don't know, man. The Duffy family has long resided in Colorado. Duffy attended the University of Colorado Law School, and in 2019 he was the recipient of the Most Admired CEO Award by the Denver Business Journal. Duffy, who described himself as an avid fly fisher, said he'd been looking for the right property for his family for many years. 2, probably, at least, right? Duffy said he did not know Gorsuch was one of the owners when he made his first offer. The fact that he was going to be a Supreme Court justice was absolutely irrelevant to the purchase of that property. It's a wonderful piece of property, and we're so glad we bought it, said Duffy. Gorsuch and his associates purchased the property in 2005 through their LLC, the Waldman Group, which was dissolved after the 2017 sale. The home was originally listed in July of 2015 for $2.495 million. The fact that the property had sat on the market for so long and that its price had been lowered a couple times suggests the partner were having trouble finding a buyer. The real estate transaction is another example of how the lack of a firm code of ethics for the court stands in contrast to most other branches of the U.S. government, including the White House and Congress, as well as lower court judges. The code of conduct for lower court U.S. judges says judges should, quote, avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all activities, and discourages frequent transactions or continuing business relationships with lawyers or other persons likely to come before the court on which the judge serves. Unlike many of the country's state and federal courts, the Supreme Court lacks a code of conduct. This is exactly the type of situation that an ethics code that included vetting of transactions and full disclosure would clear up, said Kyle Herrig, president of Accountable.us, a progressive research organization. Without decisive action, the conservatives on the Supreme Court will forever tarnish its reputation in our public life, he said. Wow. At the time of Gorsuch's appointment, his ownership of the Colorado property drew attention only for the fact that his co-owners were major figures in the oil and gas industry. Gorsuch's ties to the oil and gas industry run deep. As a lawyer at a Washington firm nearly 20 years ago, Gorsuch represented oil and gas billionaire Philip Anschutz on a variety of matters as outside counsel, and was through this connection that Gorsuch befriended his future real estate partners. Those are the pals, I guess. Anschutz developed Anschutz helped Gorsuch win an appointment to an open seat on a federal appeals court in Denver, including directly lobbying the George W. Bush White House. Gorsuch's connections to Anschutz extended to both his prior real estate partners. The Walden Group included Kevin Conwick, who had advised Anschutz in deals to buy sports teams and other projects like the Staples Center in Los Angeles, and Cannon Harvey. Who are these names? Who are these people? Who oversaw Anschutz's venture capital investment division. So actually, probably the more troublesome connection is his partners in all of this. And, this sounds like, I guess it could possibly be, if not an arm's length transaction, one that's not so troublesome at its heart, but the real trouble is, why didn't you just say who bought the damn thing? There was a blank line there where it's supposed to say who purchased the property, and you wouldn't fill it in. And if it worries you, then you can't make the sale. And I know it's troublesome and everything, and your partners were probably like, oh, this sucks. We want to dump this property already, and we got a willing buyer here, and it's an expensive property. There's not that many people who are just going to come along and buy 30 acres outside of Denver for nearly $2 million. Come on, let's just, Greenberg Trauer, they're big lawyers. That's the kind of person who's going to have money. And the people who are going to have the money to buy these places are going to end up in courts a lot. So, there could be something. But let's face it, if it's true that you don't know the guy and he himself doesn't appear before the court, and while Greenberg Traurig is a big firm, it's not absolutely necessary that any business that they have before federal courts at all is going to raise such a big problem. Just disclose it, and then everybody can figure it out afterwards. But if you don't disclose it, it's just not going to work. This whole thing is just going to fall apart, because when they discover who the buyer is, then they're going to suppose that there was something you were hiding, because you will have hidden something. Don't hide things. This is probably a sale that, he will get away with it. So it's probably a sale that he could have gotten away with without the stink of scandal. But now, and if it had happened without the Clarence Thomas stuff happening, it's a thing. You should bring it up. You should write an article about it. But probably by itself, it's not the worst thing in the world. But when it's one of 15 problems that are just easily solved and easily addressed, then why do you have to hide the ball? Could it have been an omission? They do mention that in the Politico piece. We're not sure. We'll need more detail before we're able to decide whether he was hiding the ball or whether it was just like, oh, I didn't see that one and I didn't fill it in. But I don't know. It's also, of course, the responsibility of the Senate to pick over these things. I notice you didn't fill this line in. What's that about? Or I notice you got money from Walden LLC. What is that? Who's in it? Do they really never get to that? I guess not. I suppose on the other hand, there's other countervailing pressures, and this is a good process discussion to have, right? Gorsuch is named to the Supreme Court. Anybody is named to the Supreme Court, and we turn to the Senate and think about it, right? There are certain senators that you might think, who have a reputation, who might be like, well, I don't understand what he's asking, but that guy must be on to something, because he's the kind of person who digs deep in those things. But most of the time, you're doing the questions, right? The TV is on you, the cameras are on you, everybody's watching. There are significant issues looming. Try to have that hearing now, right? There's going to be questions about abortion. There's going to be questions about transgender rights, all sorts of things, equity of all kinds, environmental law questions. There's a million different issues, right? And with the cameras on you, you say, so I notice you've got income from Walden LLC. And, who's in Walden LLC? Right? And, people will be like, well, where's this going? Is this boring? What's happening? And if he answers the questions, well, it's, two guys I, am friendly with. We were co-workers a couple years back when I worked at, some Washington law firm. I don't know if they named the law firm in here. Oh, Well, exactly who? Who are we talking about? Well, let's see. There's two guys who I was friends with at the law firm. Kevin Conwick is one of the guys, and the other guy's name is Cannon Harvey. And now there's two of your 5 minutes are up. And okay. Well, who are these guys exactly? Oh, they were coworkers of mine at blah 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 law firm. I don't remember where he worked. We could look it up, but who cares? Right. And, now people are yawning. Well, aren't you going to ask him about abortion or something? I mean, come on, give me a break. Ask him about his mom and her contempt of Congress charges. Something like that? Nothing? Well, tell us more about them. I don't know. One of them was head of litigation and the other guy was the managing partner. And, oh, well, what kind of cases did you work on together? All kinds. So far he's not really hiding the ball. What they would be trying to get at is, well, isn't it true, Judge Gorsuch, that both Kevin Conwick and Cannon Harvey and you were very intimately involved in the legal affairs of Philip Anschutz, he's an oil and gas billionaire. Anschutz was one of our clients, yes. And those were his concerns, oil and gas. That's how he made his money. All right. Well, do you think that makes you unfairly biased towards oil and gas interests? There's going to be a lot of oil and gas interests before the Supreme Court. Lots of environmental law. Oh, okay. Environmental law. He's talking about that. I care about that. There might be. But I worked in a law firm and the law firm had an oil and gas client and I worked on it. Yeah, sure. All right, and so they're partners in Walden LLC, huh? Yes. And what does Walden LLC do? Well, at the moment, we own property in Colorado together. We're partners in a vacation, cabin out there. So what is this, like timeshare or something? Sort of. You ever rent it out to other people? No. But so you just keep this lavish 30-acre vacation home in Colorado? Well, yeah, with partners. I own a 20% stake in it. And the other two guys own the other 80% of it. But, I get to use it once in a while when we're out there and for vacations. Huh. I see. And are you planning on selling it? Yeah, actually, we might. Now that I'm going to be here in Washington, D.C., I'm not going to get to use it a whole lot. So I was thinking of getting out of it because, I've been a judge for a while. Judges don't get paid that much money. When I was working in a private law firm and private practice, I was making a lot more. But, they might want to get another partner that can go in with a bigger chunk. Anyway, we put it on the market. And we'll probably get rid of it soon. Well, how's it doing? How much is it listed for? Well, we listed it for almost $2.5 million. Pretty healthy chunk, but we haven't had any takers. I see. Isn't it true that you've discounted the price? Yes, we've been trying to sell it, and it hasn't been working, so we lowered the price. And then eventually the guy buys it, and, it's like, so you owned property, and then you got money when you sold the property? Yes. And you sold it to a lawyer, isn't that right? Now, this is where he's starting to say, like, okay, now they're going to be like digging into this guy's background and my background because he's a lawyer. If he had been if it had been Jose Canseco, they probably wouldn't have done anything about it. If Bill Gates had bought the property, they'd probably say, well, lucky you. But maybe he should have paid the $2.5 million instead of the 1.8. And, there's really not that much there. But once you say, well, who bought the property? I'm not going to tell you. That's an issue. That's a problem. You can't do that. Neither should anybody else be able to do that. Thomas is the one with the enormous problem. But, now Gorsuch has got himself tied to Thomas, which would have been easy to solve if he had said, yeah, the guy who bought it is what's his name over here from Greenberg Traurig. And people would have said, Greenberg Traurig, that's a huge law firm. Don't you think that's some kind of conflict? Well, I hope not. Greenberg Traurig does represent a lot of big clients. They occasionally do come before the court, but we're talking about one guy at Greenberg Traurig. He's the big cheese there. And even in retrospect, right? You look back and you say, well, there's 12 cases in which Greenberg-Traurig was involved, and not even necessarily, certainly not as a party, but not even necessarily directly representing clients. Sometimes they filed amicus briefs. And how have those cases come out? About 2/3 of them I voted with the side that Greenberg-Traurig was taking. But I'm a conservative corporate lawyer. That shouldn't surprise anybody. And about 1/3 of them I voted against them. All right. If it's 12-0, I'd say, that's weird, but explainable. 8-4, I don't know. That's okay. I mean, I don't know that there's a great deal of worry here, but again, in light of the fact that we're already talking about ethics and the lax rules and it doesn't make any sense. Even the Supreme Court would probably say, if they were weighing their own ethical issues as a legal matter, and they would say the entirety of the federal judiciary has these rules. How is it that the rules become more lax when you accumulate even more power by joining the Supreme Court? And they would probably say, no, it was never anybody's intention that the Supreme Court, that the rules are lower, the bar is lower, and that the requirements are diminished by gaining higher office. That can't be the case. But here we are. Anyway, so that's it. I don't know. I guess I don't know if I necessarily intended to use up the entirety of the first segment, but it's a big story, and we'll be talking about it. I gained no points with anybody, I think, by saying, well, maybe it's not the biggest thing in the world. But given how much we've learned about Clarence Thomas, I don't think anybody's going to, be able to make the claim that, Gorsuch too. Gorsuch must go. I mean, he's a conservative, and we may disagree with him, but his behavior has not been nearly as outrageous as Thomas's, and I think probably all of you probably reaching that conclusion too. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. I forgot to tell you, Greenberg-Traurig has bought this program during the commercial break. Fantastic. I wanted to just let you know and be on the up and up. $11 was the price, and quite honestly, 10 of it was a bribe. So, that's good news. And I don't know, I'll probably go out for ice cream later on. Just wanted to let everybody know. There was other big news, and probably I think when I finally turned in last night, I probably imagined that the lead story today would be Tucker Carlson got fired. But then there was this Gorsuch thing, and whatever. And it's funny. I was just considering whether or not we should have been tougher on Gorsuch in all of this. I don't really care, honestly. But I mean, it's not that I don't care about what he did. I do. I mean, it's an issue. There should be a real Supreme Court ethics code, and Congress should come up with one. Of course, the real problem here is the justices could conceivably say, yeah, there's no imposing requirements on our branch by other branches. So no, forget about it. And that's the reason why there is no Supreme Court Code of Ethics. And, they could probably, but they should adopt one under pressure. I mean, that's the way, I guess, the system, such as it is supposed to work, right? If we can't do it mechanically, politically, then we should do it under pressure, as a matter of preserving the dignity and honor of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should adopt their own. I think that's what they would say the founders actually intended for this. And yet they won't do it, which is kind of unusual. Anyway, I'm not in any sense trying to say, well, if I'm reasonable about Gorsuch, then Republicans will see that and join us in a bipartisan fashion on condemning Clarence Thomas. That is not true. It's not my intention, certainly, and it's never been my belief that Republicans would then say, okay, well, as long as he's reasonable on the reasonable things, then we'll all, he's being reasonable by acknowledging that the Gorsuch issue isn't that big of a problem. We'll be reasonable in return by acknowledging that the Thomas problem is a big problem. No, they won't. They'll claim that it isn't, and whatever. And I mean, I guess there's still room for convincing me if there's more facts in the background that haven't been revealed by the Politico piece, that the Gorsuch issue is a bigger problem. But anyway, it's not an attempt to get Republicans to agree. They never will. I don't believe in that. I just happen to think that, independent of everything else that's going on, you'd probably reach the conclusion in the end, yeah, Gorsuch, you should have said who bought the property. That would have been better. This is a case where I think, again, it's not the, quote, crime, and it's not a crime, but the cover-up that's the worst part. And, not even like it was a huge cover-up either. So, okay. Anyway, on to the next subject. Yes, Tucker Carlson fired by Fox News. Lots of theorizing about why that might have happened. Of course, lots of theorizing about how it might really be some sort of weird double cross play and it's not really happening, or people saying, oh, I don't believe for a minute that Fox fired him because he lied on the air or he was a hypocrite. It was a pure business decision and he was critical of Fox leadership. It's not that he lied about January 6th or Trump's election. They never would fire him for those things, and it's probably all true. But he's fired nonetheless, so and there you have it. And somebody made an excellent point observing yesterday, and I didn't put it away, that Tucker Carlson, I mean, I guess there's hope for everyone, right? But at the same time, there should be none. There should be no hope for anybody, really, basically, but certainly none for Tucker Carlson. The plain fact of it is that Tucker Carlson has been fired by 3 relatively major news networks now. He was fired by CNN from Crossfire, or they terminated Crossfire entirely, right? Fired by CNN, fired by, I think if I saw correctly, MSNBC. I don't know what they were doing employing him, and fired now by Fox News. And yet he will fail upwards. I don't know whether he'll land at another network or not. Of course, immediate speculation. Oh, well, he'll be at Newsmax or OANN or RT. RT actually, tweeted, we'll hire you, basically just came right straight out and said it. The Russians are ready to hire him. So that means something. But, I have a feeling he'll go the independent route for a while. And maybe he'll, show up at the offices of the Daily Caller again and see if that can keep him afloat. I don't know where he's going to extract the kind of money he was extracting from Fox News. But, he extracted it for enough years in a row at $30 million plus that I don't know if he ever really has to do anything again, but he loves being on TV. Anyway, I'll point out for the record, as I did in this morning's post, this show, this Kagro in the Morning show was on the air before Tucker Carlson Tonight ever went on the air. And Tucker Carlson was a media figure long before, we had the show here, of course. And when we outlasted Tucker Carlson Tonight, that's where he was really, turned into a powerhouse. And so something and $35 million a year later, I'm loving it. I am a billionaire now. Anyway, I don't know. We lasted longer, but it's easy to last longer when nobody's paying you. So, or at least nobody's paying you $35 million. There's not even one day anybody has even contemplated paying us even a significant portion of $35 million, even a significant portion of $1 million, even, we're around, people are like, well, $5, that's what I'll pay for your show. Okay. Well, we'll take it. And we're glad you do. But, I'm not a spectacular liar who turns people into crazed zombies. So obviously I'm not worth it nearly as much. Anyway, so he's been fired. Joan's written about it, so I'll save that speculation section and just further discussion about what it means from a progressive perspective until we give her a chance to, I don't know, maybe she doesn't really care to talk about it, but she might want to at least come on and laugh about it. The Washington Post takes a much more matter-of-fact approach to it. I don't know if it's more matter-of-fact necessarily than Jones, but what I mean is that it would be much more fun to discuss it with Joan, and much more boring to discuss it with Jeremy Barr and Sarah Ellison, but that's exactly what I intend to do. Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News after Dominion lawsuit disclosures. That had to have had something to do with it. Somebody asked me on Mastodon just the other day, asked me about it and what did I think it was related to it. Who was it? I'll scroll back and find it. Dan Lawson. Here we are. Is it possible or likely that all of these Fox host firings are part of the deal with Dominion? I don't know if there are more Fox host firings out there. There was a CNN host firing. Don Lemon got fired, and I don't think that had anything to do with Dominion. I don't know what that had to do with. I saw what the explanation was, and it wasn't particularly good. So, maybe we'll unpack that in the coming days. But, yeah, I mean, not only was Carlson costing them $35 million a year in payroll or whatever, but he essentially lost this suit for them by blabbing in text and email, and it couldn't have helped that he was occasionally critical of Fox management. He was critical of the line they were taking on the air. He was critical of Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump then sat down for an interview with him. I don't know. Weird dynamics, but I could also see Trump, calling Murdoch and saying, you got to fire this guy. And, Murdoch saying, I have bigger problems. They all said they hate you. Isn't that, anyway. So the bombastic conservative was the network's most watched primetime host, says the subheader here. Private communications made public in a recent lawsuit revealed his sharp criticism of Fox management. So there's that too. Fox dropped Tucker Carlson, its controversial yet top-rated primetime host, on Monday, a sudden and surprise parting with one of the most influential voices in Republican politics who had helped define the network's bombastic tone in the Trump era. It was rather interesting. Oh, and by the way, somebody had the very clever line, I think it was a wonket social media presence of one kind or another, that said, Tucker Carlson's last lie on Fox News was, we'll be back Monday. That was pretty good. Or something like that, anyway. And credit where it's due for that funny thinking. Anyway, well, I'll read you another paragraph or two of the Post piece here. His firing came less than a week after Fox settled the defamation suit from Dominion Voting Systems. You know all about it, the amount of the payment, though Carlson largely avoided, weirdly, they say, trafficking in those specific conspiracy theories, that is, the ones around Dominion Voting System. His private messages were among thousands of internal communications made public during its progress through the courts, the suit's progress, that is, that caused angst and embarrassment for Fox and heightened the company's legal jeopardy. That was definitely true. More recently, Carlson's staff culture, though, had come under scrutiny, which is amazing because the same rumors have been circulating for a decade plus, largely since before he was a Fox News nightly host. He apparently has been affiliated with the network since 2009 as a contributor. But Fox, or whatever it is, Tucker Carlson Tonight, his flagship show, I believe launched in 2016 or so. But, I mean, for a long time before, like Daily Caller was known as a place where there was all sorts of harassment and discrimination going on. So, should come as no surprise. He was given a show knowing that this was the culture of his workplace, right? It was that, so recently, Carlson's staff culture had come under scrutiny after a former booker for his show sued Fox News for discrimination, claiming that she endured sexist treatment while working for him, and messages revealed in the lawsuit showed Carlson referring to Sidney Powell, a female attorney affiliated with Donald Trump, as using the C word. Woo. That's going to get the big censoring horn for you. And, I will say this. How old is Tucker Carlson? I mean, we might as well look it up since I was thinking of looking at his Wikipedia profile anyway. And because it was so odd when I was scanning it yesterday. So he's, about my age. Born in May of 1969. So he's about a little under a year older or younger than I am. So he's in his early 50s, 53. And how long does it take to train a competent and apparently reasonably socialized and successful adult not to write the C word in emails at work? I mean, I think I think I've been pretty well aware for, I would say, 30 years plus now that you can't write that word or words like it in work emails. Certainly not about people that you might come across in a working relationship either. If you're a Fox News host and you're going to be interviewing a person, you can't be writing that about them. Enough with the petulant child routine already, Tucker. You're 53 years old. It's, this is not a youthful mistake anymore, and good riddance. And really, honestly, if Fox had any integrity, which they don't, obviously, I don't know how easy it would be, but they should be, they should be, in all righteousness, they should be clawing back all the money they gave them. It's ridiculous that Fox and everybody else enabled this kind of lifestyle. I mean, but even before he was the host of the show that they gave him, the Daily Caller atmosphere was pretty much the same. Everyone knew that they were, the whole publication was dedicated to the proposition that there needed to be space online to cover what's her name again, Sarah. I can't believe I'm actually blanking on the name of the Alaska governor. Damn! Why I'm really panicking now. Alaska, Palin. All right, Governor Palin. All right. I mean, this is a great development, by the way, that I actually got to the stage in life where I'm blanking on Sarah Palin's name. But the Daily Caller was founded on the premise that there needed to be online space, essentially, where you could do things like refer to Sarah Palin as a quote, and this was just such bruh language. Carlson was already too old to be doing this, but he was hiring, early 20-somethings who could, fill the space with people who would refer to her as a smoke show, which, oh my God, first of all, no. Second of all, what are you doing to women? And third of all, how old are you? And stop with this stuff already. But that's what the Daily Caller was founded as, a place for fraternity bruh humor / political analysis. And he was already in his 40s, and it was dirty old man, stop it already. Let the teenagers, they can have their own locker room talk. They don't need you doing it or encouraging it. Anyway, I said that his Wikipedia profile was somewhat interesting, and mostly it was because, having found out what we found out about his private correspondence, I loathe Trump, he's whatever else he said, right? There's this the third paragraph of Tucker Carlson's Wikipedia profile says, an advocate of former U.S. President Donald Trump, Carlson was described by Politico as, quote, perhaps the highest profile proponent of Trumpism, but was willing to criticize Trump when he believed that the former president was straying from that ideology. He was said to have influenced some of Trump's decisions as president, including the cancellation of a military strike against Iran in 2019, the firing of John Bolton, and the commutation of Roger Stone's prison sentence in 2020. Carlson has been described as the leading voice of white grievance politics, we, all of those things. But it's interesting that even that has survived the revelation that he was, texting and emailing people that he loathed Trump. And I guess that's how hollow he is, that we still can't really decide which part of Tucker Carlson was the actual truth of Tucker Carlson. I find that interesting and also, contemptible. But anyway, good riddance. Glad he's fired. Most of the people at Fox think so too. And he's a dirtbag. And the fact that he's, he was always going to be rich. He started life rich. But it bothers me immensely that they gave him even more money. And it was for refusing to grow up and face reality. And that's astonishing to me, and I'm always astonished that people can make a living that way. But, whatever. The world is a disappointing place. Okay, let's see. Other issues to discuss for today. There are plenty, of course. And let's see. One of them was, where is this thing? Oh, yes, Patrick Snyder sent this to us a while ago, yesterday perhaps, in the KITM hashtag on the Bird site, along with the note that this was a satisfying explanatory thread. Nothing better than satisfying things. They're so satisfying after all. It says so right in the name. And explanatory, what? Yes, I definitely want to hear about this. What are we talking about? Well, we could use a little background, and perhaps we'll get it by following these threads. The news that we haven't yet discussed, Fani Willis has made an announcement saying that, yes, there's still the possibility that we will be charging Trump with crimes, but that although you were waiting to hear that they were going to happen in the next 2 weeks, very soon, because we were waiting for the Georgia state legislature to gavel out of session, and it was going to happen after that. Now it's being delayed, and even further, at some point after July 11th. July 11th, I guess, would be the earliest that she would move with such an indictment. Why? What's going on? And the answer is, I don't know, but there are some guesses. The satisfying, how did Patrick put it? Satisfying explanatory thread is from Lisa Rubin. Who's Lisa Rubin? She is the sometimes, it says here, on-air MSNBC legal analyst, but maybe she's being fired like Tucker Carlson, who knows. Always off-air, Maddow, let's see, Wagner tonight, Alex Wagner's show, I guess this is where she appears occasionally. Recovering lawyer who loves receipts. How do you like that? Okay. Does that tell you anything? She is quote tweeting the message of Tamar, I don't know if she says Tamar, Hallerman, an Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter covering the Fulton County Trump probe and more, and a co-host of a podcast known as The Breakdown. Well, I don't know if she uses the article "the" or not. It's a Breakdown podcast. Recovering Washington correspondent. So there you have it. And she, I guess, covered the actual news. We'll start with that and then find the satisfying explanation available from Lisa Rubin. Okay, so Tamar writes yesterday, breaking news. She tweets, Fulton County DA Willis says she will announce this summer whether former President Donald Trump and his allies will be charged with crimes related to alleged interference in Georgia's 2020 election. Can we read the story? Let's find out. It's an exclusive. If we're going to read it, we're going to read it at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. DA says indictment announcement coming this summer in Trump probe by Tamar Hallerman. And Bill Rankin also gets notice on the byline here. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, I should just cut the garbage out. Fani Willis on Monday said she would announce this summer whether former President Trump and his allies would be charged with those crimes aforementioned. Willis revealed the timetable in a letter to local law enforcement in which he asked them to be ready for, quote, heightened security and preparedness because she predicted her announcement, quote, may provoke a significant public reaction. interesting all by itself. In the letters, Willis said she'll announce possible criminal indictments between July 11th and September 1st. It's good she didn't choose September 11th, sending one of the strongest signals yet that she's on the verge of trying to obtain an indictment against Trump and his supporters. Please accept this correspondence as notice to allow you sufficient time to prepare the sheriff's office and coordinate with local, state, and federal agencies to ensure that our law enforcement community is ready to protect the public, Willis wrote to Fulton Sheriff Patrick Labat, L-A-B-A-T. Similar letters were hand-delivered to Darren Shirebaum, Atlanta's chief of police, and Matthew Kallmeyer, Kallmyer, director of the Atlanta Fulton County Emergency Management Agency. Wow, okay. We have seen in recent years that some may go outside of public expressions of opinion that are protected by the First Amendment to engage in acts of violence that will endanger the safety of those we are sworn to protect, Willis wrote. As leaders, it is incumbent upon us to prepare. Trump has called for mass demonstrations, in response to overreach from prosecutors, which isn't what's happening here, so I guess we don't have to worry about it, triggering concerns about violent unrest, not unlike the January 6, 2021 insurrection he promoted. Hello. Several legal observers closely following the Fulton investigation, which Willis launched more than 2 years ago, said the letters suggest that Willis will seek charges against the former president. It obviously seems to imply the case against Trump will be presented to the grand jury, a different one, the charging kind. Former Gwinnett County District Attorney Danny Porter said, I don't think any of the other targets would raise that level of caution. I think that's the obvious implication. Norm Eisen, former ethics czar under President Obama, who co-authored a Brookings Institute report on the Fulton probe, agreed. While she does not have the former president's name in her letter, the evidence and the applicable law in Georgia point to the substantial likelihood that Donald Trump and his principal co-conspirators will be included when she follows through on plans she confirms in this letter. For inspiration, Fulton authorities can look to the preparations that took place in Manhattan ahead of Trump's arraignment earlier this month in a separate criminal case involving hush money payments. Nothing happened there, but Atlanta's not necessarily New York. Authorities erected barricades and shut down streets surrounding the courthouse. The police used a stand-ready order for roughly 35,000 officers in the region, as well as the city, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. About an hour before Trump's afternoon court appearance, a number of Manhattan courtrooms were closed, according to published reports. There was also a total shutdown of the route the former president took to the courthouse from Trump Tower and from the courthouse to board his plane at LaGuardia Airport. Oh, that usually happens whenever a president moves around, even a former president. The Fulton Sheriff's Office referred any questions about Willis's letter to the DA's office. That's not very interesting. We'll skip back down here. This isn't the first time law enforcement in Atlanta has been ramped up in response to the Fulton DA's Trump investigation. Last May, as a Fulton judge selected members of the special grand jury, the one that doesn't make charges, the Fulton Sheriff's Office blocked off vehicle traffic on the streets surrounding the courthouse and stationed deputies with guns on many street corners. That happens anyway. With semi-automatic rifles, that's happening increasingly too. Snipers patrolled nearby rooftops as helicopters circled overhead. So you get the idea, right? 6 months later, before jurors interviewed Michael Flynn, the notorious spy, of course, they assigned heavily armed officers to guard the courthouse steps and brought in a bomb-sniffing dog, just for fun. They just like dogs. Well, anyway, so, okay, what's going on here? Why the wait until July? Time for that satisfying explanation. Once again, this time coming from Lisa Rubin. Thanks to Patrick Snyder for referring it to us. Folks have been asking me, Lisa Rubin, that's me. Hi, everybody. I don't know what her voice sounds like. Hello, everybody. Probably not that high, but higher than mine, maybe. Folks have been asking me since this story broke, says Lisa Rubin, why is Fani Willis waiting until at least July 11th to announce her charging decision? That's a reasonable question. Congratulations, everybody. And I think there's a logical explanation. Very promising so far. Good question and a good answer. I don't know what they are. I know what the question is. Let's find out the answer. Well, recall, says Lisa Rubin, that last week Willis's office moved to disqualify a lawyer representing 10 of Georgia's fake electors. Yes? Right? Good. They had two grounds. First, that she, the lawyer, did not, contrary to representations by her then co-counsel, communicate immunity offers to certain of her clients. Right? People were offered immunity by prosecutors, and she just said, I'm not going to tell them. That's a big problem. Second, they revealed that in meetings with prosecutors on April 12th and 14th, certain of that lawyer's clients accused another fake elector and a fellow client of committing, quote, acts that are violations of Georgia law. We don't know if it's one of those Georgia laws where it's like, in Georgia, it's illegal to buy a hat while carrying an alligator. But it was probably a more important law than that. And I don't know, maybe they repealed that law. I made that law up, but it may be true. Anyway, because of the impracticable and ethical mess, that's a quote, that the lawyer created, the DA's office has moved to disqualify her from representing any of the 10 electors, all of whom were notified last year that they were targets of the investigation. That means 10 people, some of whom remain targets, others of whom are cooperators on exploring cooperation, all likely need new lawyers now. And here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just that, it might be out of a sense of fairness and say, well, we're not going to charge anybody in this case until we give people the opportunity to get new lawyers. But why July 11th? Is that explained in here? We'll find out. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, Lisa says. So the rest of that stuff was boring. I know you're asleep. In Fulton County, Georgia, the terms of the court run for 2 months and begin each of the first Mondays in January, March, May, July, September, and November. So now that it's getting interesting, of course, it's almost time for the break, right? Let's see what we can get in here. So she offers a link for proof of all that. And given that Willis does not know how soon a court will resolve the disqualification motion, she also might be hesitant to bring her case before a regular grand jury now. Once she starts, she has roughly 8 weeks, and she can't afford to blow it. And there's already people saying, oh, she's made some mistake in her procedure here, and delaying things is another big mistake. We'll find out more about that later on, I'm sure. My guess, Lisa says, is therefore that Willis remains confident in her case and eager to move forward, but for this new wrinkle that might not be solved within the week, but should be in the rearview mirror by July 11th, is what's going on here. In other words, giving them a chance to rule on the disqualification motion, get people new lawyers, and wait for a new term. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio after just a minute's break. So, yeah, we squeezed it all in there. So the satisfying explanation may just be that I guess they're waiting. The real issue here is in Fulton County, Georgia, as she tweeted earlier, Lisa Rubin reminds us, the terms of the court run for 2 months and begin each of the first Mondays in January, March, May, July, September, and November. But it can't be the case that the first Monday in July is July 11th because there's only 7 days in a week. So I'm just kind of curious, and maybe they won't do the first one. But the first Monday in July is July 3rd, and what's curious about that is that July 11th is a Tuesday, but maybe that's just, I don't know. I mean, that's weird. Like, well, why? I might be just thinking, well, okay, we're not going to do it on the opening day, and we might not even do it on the next Monday. Maybe indictment days or Tuesdays in Fulton County. That's when the grand juries sit. It could be something like that. And they won't be sitting the day after the opening of the session either. So that might be the first day that, or maybe that's the day you're, drawing your jury pool. And the first day that a seated grand jury would actually sit to hand up indictments would be July 11th. Maybe it's something like that. But if so, that's missing from the explanation and should really be a big part of it. Anyway, there you have it. But I think that helps explain at least part of the delay, the fact that there are terms of the courts. And that, when was the one before July? I I already lost track of that one, but it's down here, right? May would be too early. That's like next week. And the ruling for disqualification might not be settled by that point. Then you have to give people a chance to get themselves new lawyers. All right. So there's that. I see that Twitter has E. Jean Carroll trending, and that must be the fact that we mentioned yesterday the trial on her claims against Donald Trump begins today. So that's probably why it's trending. I mentioned to you that there were some people claiming that Fani Willis had made some big mistake. There was, the somewhat inflammatory headline over at Raw Story. Legal expert says Fani Willis might have made a big mistake in Georgia Trump investigation. Gets you worried, so you read it. Matthew Chapman, good job roping us in. I skimmed the article yesterday and I said, I don't agree that that's such a big mistake. It might not be anything, but let me remind myself what it was. It was, of course, they started out with the premise that Fani Willis had announced in the letter on Monday that they were delaying things, right, and they might charge them after July 11th. But former federal prosecutor Elie Honig told CNN's Wolf Blitzer, I'm already now bored and don't want to hear the rest of it, that Willis has already made things more difficult for herself by taking so long to reach a decision. That did not actually sound like a really sound reason to say that she had made some big mistake. This is another not so subtle indicator that the DA has every intention of seeking an indictment of Donald Trump, said Honig, which actually makes it sound like, hey, things are proceeding apace. What she's done in the letter is put local law enforcement, sheriffs, and others on high alert. She tells them, I'm going to need you to be ready to respond to potential demonstrations, and maybe worse, starting on July 11th. Oh, I see. Maybe worse, it's happening on July 11th, which is a terrible day. No, that is to say, respond to potential demonstrations and maybe worse than demonstrations. When do you have to be ready? Starting July 11th. Okay. And looking at this through a common sense lens, that makes no sense if she's not intending to indict Donald Trump, but it makes complete sense if she is. Now, how that got turned into, oh my God, she made such a big mistake, I don't really get. That said, Willis has immensely complicated any potential prosecution. Here's the supposed mistake. Complicated any potential prosecution of the former president, already a fraught prospect, by dragging this out until he's a candidate for office again. I think there's a very fair criticism of Fani Willis for taking this. Fani Willis became the DA on January 1st, 2021. The tape that we just heard of Donald Trump calling Brad Raffensperger, that happened the next day and then became public within hours. And now we're looking at an indictment, if this timeline holds, at earliest 2.5 years plus after the effect. It really should have been after the fact. I guess that's probably what he was trying to say. I know investigations take time. This should not have taken 2.5 plus years. And now, as a result of that, Wolf, he says, Donald Trump supporters are going to say, first of all, we didn't see an indictment for 2.5 years until after Donald Trump, A, announced his candidacy, and B, is emerging as a frontrunner. Worse still, noted Honig, they're not going to get to a trial until the middle of 2024 at the earliest. If we see a charge this summer, there's discovery and appeals and motions, and is a state judge really going to hold a trial of a potential Republican frontrunner or nominee that close to an election? I'm not so sure, and I think Fani Willis bears responsibility for taking this long to do this. Well, of course, she bears the responsibility. It's her decision. Whether or not it was a bad one in retrospect, well, we'll find out. It's an issue. But basically I'd say, well, what's the big deal? Right? Honestly, you're going to sweat about this. It takes time to do these things. She had her reasons for waiting. It's getting delayed again. It's too bad that it took so long to get around to it. Is a state judge going to delay a trial until after an election? It's possible. But that might not, that might be, okay, really, in the end. No one is going to change their mind on whether or not to vote for Donald Trump by saying, well, maybe I should just wait for a conviction, because you're innocent until proven guilty in this country. The fact that he's charged and the trial is on hold will be an issue all by itself for him in the election. So, no, I don't think it's such a, it might be a less than desirable set of circumstances, But I think, her hands were tied for a while anyway. And then, I don't know what took 2.5 years to nail this down, but roping in the fake electors, there seems to be some real value to this and some real moves underway in all of that. And I guess maybe that's what took 2.5 years, is convincing them that they need to speak up. And when they speak at trial, they're going to need to give up their allegiance to Trump and hang the guy once and for all. Okay. Let's see, other things to share with you that, there's an awful lot, but a lot of it is been bypassed by events at this point. Let's see what other interesting things to bring up. Oh, you know what? I wanted to make mention of the Washington Post article by Greg Jaffe and Patrick Marley, which was shared on social media this weekend and will make you feel like, hey, I'm a well-informed person and I know what's going on in the world, thanks to Rosalyn MacGregor, who is, of course, a regular correspondent with us here on Kagro in the morning. And in fact, I have another segment ready and waiting from Rosalyn, which we may get to today. I like to save them for Fridays to give myself a break, but Friday seems like a long way away. But this piece in the Washington Post that appeared over the weekend should sound familiar to you, and you'll say to yourself, I'm a well-informed person thanks to Rosalyn's work on her reports for the show. In a thriving Michigan county, a community goes to war with itself. And I'll give you one or two guesses as to which county it is. But too late. It's Ottawa County, just as you knew it would be. Ottawa County offers a glimpse of what happens when one of the building blocks of American democracy is consumed by ideological battles. That's a very interesting way of saying when Republican lunatics actually gain power and try to govern and can't do it, things get all screwed up. But you knew that about Ottawa County because she's been telling you all about it all along. And you probably, if you picked up this article, you would be saying, oh, yeah, I know this about Ottawa County. I already know this. Thanks, Washington Post, for finally catching up with us. So what's going on here? Give you a sense of what's happening it's a long article, and we probably could occupy, again, all day with it. Maybe that's actually wise. But there's a lot of insight involved here, and probably we would have gotten this from Rosalyn too if she were willing to send us a 45-minute segment, which, quite honestly, she should not. But I don't know whether she'd be willing to do something like that anyway. But okay, you get what's going on here. Dateline West Olive, of course. The 8 new members of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners had run for office promising to, quote, thwart tyranny in their Lakeside, Michigan community of 300,000 people. In this case, the oppressive force they aimed to thwart was the county government that they now ran. It was early January, their first day in charge. An American flag held down a spot at the front of the board's windowless meeting room. Seafoam green carpet covered the floor. Rosalyn would probably never waste our time with this, but it's a nice detail. The new commissioners, all Republicans, swore their oaths of office on family Bibles, of course, and then the firings began, because, of course, to that, too. Gone was the lawyer who had represented Ottawa County for 40 years. Gone was the county administrator who oversaw a staff of 1,800. To run the health department, they voted to install a service manager from a local HVAC company who had gained prominence as a critic of mask mandates. Wonderful. Although HVAC engineers probably know lots about ventilation, and that's actually an important part of preventing the spread of COVID-19, but I don't know whether he was, there on that basis or basically was saying, well, no, we should all be eating horse paste. And as it turns out, you'll not be surprised, that was actually the basis. Anyway, as the session entered its 4th hour, Sylvia Rodea, have we heard this woman's name yet? I don't know. The board's new vice chair put forward a motion to change the motto that sat atop the county's website and graced its official stationery. Rosalyn definitely told us about this story. Whereas the vision statement of "Where You Belong" has been used to promote the divisive Marxist ideology of the race equity movement, Rodea said, she began in her resolution. And so began a new era for Ottawa County. Across America, county governments provided services so essential that they were often an afterthought. Their employees paved roads, built parks, collected taxes, and maintained property records. In an era when Americans had never seemed more divided and distrustful, county governments, at their best, helped define what remains of the common good. So, of course, the Republicans came to destroy it. Ottawa County, I had that. Ottawa County stood out for a different reason. It was becoming a case study in what happens when one of the building blocks of American democracy is consumed by ideological battles over race, religion, and American history. Rodea's, we must have, I mean, she could not have mentioned her, but we must have forgotten the pronunciation or just rolled right by. Rodea, R-H-O-D-E-A. Sorry, Rosalyn. But Rodea's resolution continued on for 20 whereases, those opening clauses that are supposed to present the findings based on which you then finally make the ask of your resolution. So these whereases connected the current motto, "Where You Belong," right, to a broader effort that she said aimed to divide people by race, reduce their personal agency, and teach them to hate America and doubt the goodness of her people. Remember, again, the slogan is "Where You Belong." Like, what the F is wrong with that? Her proposed alternative, she said, sought to unite county residents around America's true history as a land of systemic opportunity built on the Constitution, Christianity, and capitalism. You know, on all fine premises and everything except for the Christianity part. But she flipped her resolution's final page and leaned closer to the mic, I guess for dramatic effect. "Now, therefore," I'm leaning closer to the mic, "let it be resolved." I like that. That the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners establishes a new county vision statement and motto of "Where Freedom Rings." But, okay, whatever. The commission's lone Democrat gazed out in disbelief. A few seats away, the commission's new chair savored the moment. "There's just some really beautiful language in this," he said, before calling for a vote on the resolution. It passed easily. Because also it's essentially unoffensive. It's the resolution that's offensive, but you want the vision statement and you want the motto to be "Where Freedom Rings." Okay. I mean, doesn't make a goddamn difference in the world. Sure. "Where Freedom Rings." What's amazing is "Where You Belong." Well, one that you would say, yeah, I need to replace it. First order of business, gotta replace this thing. Because to me, it'd be like, where you belong? All right, you want to be where you belong? Fine. "Where Freedom Rings"? All right, you want to be that? Fine. Like, really, honestly, who gives a crap one way or the other? But imagine, one, taking time to be that the first order of business, we got to change this. And at second, you got to change it because that guy said "Where You Belong." That's Marxist. That's grooming. That's satanic. It's, what? It's none of those things. And "Where Freedom Rings" is no less, satanic and pedophile groomy than anything else. I mean, because none of it is. There's nothing Marxist about either of them. But this is where we are. So, okay, it passes easily. A cheer went up in the room, which on this morning was about 3/4 full, but in the coming weeks would be packed with so many angry people calling each other fascists, communists, Christian nationalists, and racists that the county would have to open an overflow room down the hall. The new slogan was largely the brainchild of Joe Moss, the 37-year-old new chair of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners and a newcomer to politics. Moss and his fellow commissioners oversaw a thriving county, well, once thriving anyway, with a budget of $230 million. We'll see whether any of that lasts. On the wall in front of the meeting room where he now presided were 16 framed photographs of earlier boards made up almost entirely of white pro-business Republicans in jackets and ties. Many of those commissioners traced their roots back to the county's early Dutch settlers, from whom they inherited a Calvinist appreciation for thrift and moderation. They rarely spent more than a few $100s on election campaigns and took pride in the county's AAA bond rating, fiscal discipline, and low taxes. Under their leadership, Ottawa County prospered. It had one of the lowest unemployment rates in Michigan. That's a serious accomplishment. And since 2010 has been the fastest growing county in the state. It's the Loudoun of Michigan, then, I might say. Board meetings were civil, orderly, and until recently sparsely attended. We were rolling along good, said Greg DeJong, a Republican who spent 12 years on the board before he was unseated. No one came to our meetings before COVID, and it might be, anyway. Moss inhabited a different world than his predecessors. Like so many rising leaders in today's Republican Party, his view of his country and its politics was shaped by his faith in his church, one of dozens of big evangelical congregations that had taken root amid the country's sprawling farms and freshly sprouted subdivisions. In these churches, traditional hymns and organ music had been replaced by electric guitars, drums, colored lights, smoke machines, and modern praise songs. God existed as a tangible force at work in the county's everyday business, battling a devil whose presence was just as real and uncompromising. On a typical Sunday at Moss's Wellspring Church, people swayed and sang as the band worked their way through its 30-minute set that began every service. Then they settled into the pews and listened as their pastor warned of the, quote, many people in the country who were trying to destroy everything. It sounds like Trump to me. That is righteous and good and pure and holy. That's what people are out to do. Yes. They were the sort, he said, who were demanding free condoms at school, gender fluidity books in the public library, and drag queen story hours. People are demanding drag queen story hours, are they? By his own admission, Moss had not paid much attention to local politics. He ran a small technology business and was focused on raising his children. And then, in the fall of 2020, the Ottawa County Health Department learned of a coronavirus outbreak at his daughter's Christian school and ordered the school's leaders to comply with the governor's mask mandate. When they refused, state and county officials chained shut the school's doors for more than a week and warned parents that continued resistance could bring fines and imprisonment. Suddenly, Moss realized that those dangerous people that his pastor had been talking about on Sundays were not just in Washington and Lansing, the state's capital. They were in West Olive, where the county government was headquartered. In 2020, I became a threatened parent, Moss said on the campaign trail. I was threatened specifically by Ottawa County. No, you were relieved of the threat of coronavirus by Ottawa County saying, slow down, there's been an outbreak, let's figure out what's going on here. They were still in the mode of like, we can scrub the walls in this school and open it up in 2 weeks. But, okay, in 2021, he and Rodea, whatever her name is, formed Ottawa Impact. That's the group that Rosalyn's been telling us about all this time, to recruit and raise money for local candidates who ran as a slate. Moss, Rodea, and most of the other Ottawa Impact candidates declined to speak to local newspapers or television stations during the campaign. That's pretty amazing, too. Moss and Rodea also declined to comment for this story. Instead, they relied on the more than $150,000 Ottawa Impact had raised from mostly local donors. Their biggest was Moss's mother, by the way, to spread their message via online videos, flyers, billboards, yard signs, and Facebook posts. With his quarter-zip sweaters and khaki pants, Moss looked like a suburban dad out for a round of golf, one who usually kept a handgun strapped to his hip. Hard to swing, by the way, when you've got a gun on your hip. On his group's website, Moss warned that Ottawa County had been, quote, strategically targeted by the, quote, progressive left, even though the county had, since 1864, consistently voted Republican in presidential races. 1864 would have been almost their first opportunity to have done so, as a matter of fact. He saw evidence of this leftist campaign in the county health department's decision in the fall of 2021 to impose a school mask mandate for children who were still too young for the vaccine. About 1,000 people, including Moss, angrily protested the policy at a county board meeting. He saw it in the county's "Where You Belong" motto. And in what sense he connected the two of those things, I'll never know. I think he's just mentally ill. And he saw it, whatever it was, in the $470,000 that local corporations had donated to jumpstart a county office of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The companies, which sold auto parts and office furniture worldwide, hoped the initiative might help attract and retain global talent to a place that was more than 80% white and could sometimes seem unwelcoming to minorities. Last November, commissioners backed by Ottawa Impact won 8 of the 11 seats on the county board. They were now in charge of a government that they feared, overseeing county employees that they did not trust. And I guess you can tell between that setup and everything that Rosalyn told you what else is included in this very lengthy article. Well worth your time. Well worth our time, really. But if we read it, it'll take us all the way, well, no matter what we do, really, it'll take us all the way to the next break. And then it'll be time to pick up with Joan, if she's available. And haven't heard that she's not, but maybe that since I'm on the air, I may have missed some major emergency or emerging new news story. All right. So anyway, I recommend that article to you, and for a number of reasons, not the least of which is just good information, but it'll also make you feel like, yeah, I know what's going on in Ottawa County because Rosalyn keeps telling us. So there you go. I found that to be interesting and helpful. Okay, let's see. Other bits and pieces of news that I would like to cram in here before the end of the segment, something I've been holding on to for a couple of days from Arizona, AZ Central, Arizona being the AZ. Here's some news from, just before the weekend. Ray Stern for the Arizona Republic reports, reporter investigating where State Senator Wendy Rogers lives in Arizona. Probably an outgrowth of the findings by, did Judd Legum discover this on his own at first, or was he just reporting about other people's investigations about the Speaker of the House in Tennessee? That generated some significant problems for him, and maybe everybody said, let's take a look at other controversial figures and loudmouths in other state legislatures. Wendy Rogers, one of the more, really one of the biggest loons in the legislature in Arizona. And when we were recently, reading something about a lunatic in the House side there, maybe getting themselves in ethical trouble. I don't know whether they got bounced out of the legislature or not. I can't remember, but it feels like we were reading about that recently, and I was wondering whether Wendy Rogers was going to come under the same scrutiny. She's a loon and a half and has been a problem for a long time. Well, somebody decided, maybe she has the same problem as the Speaker of the House in Tennessee. Well, the reporter who has been investigating it has now been hit with a restraining order. So now things are really getting interesting. Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers, she's from Flagstaff, by the way, or supposed to be anyway, has convinced a judge, believe it or not, to issue an order barring a reporter from contacting her at home. Flagstaff Justice Court Magistrate Judge Amy Criddle, that probably is the pronunciation, Criddle, signed the restraining order on April 19th against Cameron Sanchez, who covers the state Senate for the Arizona Capital Times, after a petition from Rogers. Criddle's order doesn't appear to show Sanchez doing anything out of the ordinary, though, in her job as a reporter. Sanchez was investigating where Rogers lives, according to the Capital Times article about the court order. It's linked herein. Specifically, an injunction against harassment. State law requires lawmakers to reside in the legislative district they represent, not unlike the Tennessee situation. And Sanchez was investigating properties in Tempe and Chandler that Rogers owned. The senator lists Flagstaff as her address in paperwork related to her office so that she won't get in trouble. But does she actually live there? Legislative District 7, which Rogers represents, includes Payson and Globe in Gila counties, Gila, not Gila, is it? And part of Flagstaff in, Coconino County. Is that right? Coconino, Coconino County. Rogers wrote on social media Thursday that a, quote, creepy reporter was, quote, stalking me and my neighbors at my private residences, she says in plural, with no explanation. And no explanation of the plural of residences as well. And maybe she means she and her neighbors and their residences. And that a judge had issued the order for Sanchez's, quote, bizarre behavior. She posted Ring doorbell photos of Sanchez ringing doorbells and standing outside one of the homes. But I mean, that's what you do with doorbells. You ring them. What's the name of the doorbell photo camera that captured her, or the reporter? Is it a her? Yeah, I don't know. Ringing, what are you supposed to, the name is Ring. So she's doing what you're supposed to be doing with doorbells. Anyway, in a written statement released by the state Senate, Rogers said that she doesn't know what Sanchez, quote, is capable of. That actually calls for dramatic music, but I'm out of time to play it. So, dun, 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 I'll just do it on my own. Rogers, you may recall, she doesn't know what she's capable of, and that no one in their right mind would show up uninvited to my home at night. Therefore, I don't trust that this person wouldn't lash out and try to physically harm me in some fashion. No basis for that, but okay. Rogers, you may know, was censured last year in part for stating on social media that her political enemies should be hanged. Didn't return any phones or calls or emails seeking comment. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. At the moment, we are free to continue with the article from out of Arizona about Wendy Rogers. It's really amazing we knew that Rogers was something of a paranoid weirdo, for sure. And I guess this is how it manifests itself. And I guess if you've got a friendly judge or whatever, you can kind of get away with this sort of stuff by mischaracterizing everything that the reporter does. But so far it sounds like it's all within bounds of regular reporter type behavior. In a written statement released by the state Senate, Rogers said that she doesn't know what Sanchez is capable of. You remember all this? So who would in their right mind show up uninvited at my home at night? Well, was it like 7 p.m.? Was it 10? Was it 11? Was it overnight? In the wee hours? I don't know. Who would show up at your house at night? Someone who had a question for you when you were home, which is at night. So I don't know. The whole thing is she's basically saying, I think this reporter might assault me in some way. Now, again, reminder, Rogers was on the receiving end of a censure last year when she said that her political enemies should be hanged. That's the sort of thing that would make me, I guess, if I were going to a judge looking for a restraining order against her, I would say, well, even the state legislature recognized that she was a little bit out of control and that she threatened to hang people, and maybe we should have a restraining order against her. Well, all right, let's see. Lots of people who didn't return calls or voicemails. Sanchez even declined to comment. Here's the story continues. Rogers told the court that Sanchez rang the doorbell at her properties near the Capitol on April 18th and asked an electrician working for Rogers and her husband about the senator's whereabouts. That does sound awfully evil, don't you think? Is the senator at home? No. Now that's called questioning people about the senator's whereabouts. Well, I guess so. But yeah, I guess if you wanted to conflate that or inflate that into something evil sounding. She was tracking my movements. Hello, are you at home? I am not. Okay. Well, let's put that aside. We'll continue to take a look at the details of things. But all it's meant to do is to convince you of the craziness of Wendy Rogers and remind you that, yes, fascism on the march once again, that out in Arizona, the lunatic Republicans' idea of the First Amendment is if you can make up a story, the rest of this, I skimmed a little bit of it, is that essentially now that she has a restraining order against this reporter, the main Capitol newspaper reporter is not allowed to approach or question Senator Rogers in the Capitol or at home. So this is an interesting way of using a restraining order to protect yourself from ever having to be questioned by the free press, which is pretty amazing and probably not the sort of thing that a judge should ever have allowed in a million years. But they did, because they're crazy out there. Okay, so now Joan McCarter is here. Let's get to that, because there's crazy things happening elsewhere. And you know all about them, don't you? Hi, Joan. How are you doing?
I am fine. I was just wrapping up my take on the Gorsuch
okay.
issue.
All right. What you want to tell us what it was?
Well, no, because
okay.
In the meantime,
all right, bye.
We have a new report
from
Bloomberg. No. Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself from a 2004 appeal tied to Harlan Crow's family business.
That's worse. You see, Clarence Thomas is the one with the real serious problem, in my view here, and but does make a problem that honestly, ordinarily would be like, well, you should have reported that, Gorsuch, but all right. He
really should have reported that, and the fact that he didn't is kind of glaring.
Yes, more so.
That's where the problem comes in. But
I'm in agreement with that. But okay, so basically everything that you say, if you were willing to offer Thomas the benefit of the doubt and say, well, he did this thing, but maybe Crow just didn't have any cases directly in front of him. But if he did, that would be bad. Okay, well, he did. Okay.
Well, Thomas did say, Crow has never had a case before me.
Okay, so right. All right, so then like that's a lie and wrong. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if only there were a way to hold him accountable for that.
Absolutely, Thomas should have recused. It is another, apparently, because Harlan Crow is a real estate guy. It's another real estate deal. Mm-hmm. I just saw the headline and I haven't read the whole thing. A case involving Trammell Crow Residential made its way to the Supreme Court in 2005. Thomas didn't recuse himself.
Were they close friends then? Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of this bribery had taken place by 2005. I can't recall off the top of my head. Like when he took the vacations, etc.
I don't recall off the top of my head either, and I'm having to answer a quick question. So
okay, well, at any rate, I can cover for the question. We'll say, I'm not certain either. But again, another issue arising when you say, well, he's never had a case in front of me. Oh, he has had a case in front of me. Oh, okay. Well, then that's bad for me too. I mean. It just ends up making, and then here is where the other justices should probably step forward and say something or agree with the call for imposing a code of ethics on themselves. And maybe that's really the point of bringing this Gorsuch story forward, is that stories that might be uncomfortable but explainable and dealt with small moves towards disclosure and the imposition of new ethics rules explode into uncontrollable firestorms because of your colleague.
Exactly.
Get rid of that colleague.
And this is why the Gorsuch story is a story.
Okay. We are on the same page then. What do you know? That's pretty amazing. We're in pretty good agreement most of the time.
Let's see. What do we know? We know that Crow and Thomas have been buddies for more than 20 years. Mm-hmm. So that would be before 2003. So that would be before.
So then he has a case.
Came.
All right. And, yeah, who knows? Maybe their friendship grew and blossomed into enormous $500,000 vacations once things started to go Harlan Crow's way when his cases came to the court. We don't know. We don't know what's the quid and what's the quo. We just know that there was something pro in there in the middle.
Let's see.
How fun to find that out.
3 decades. 3 decades, they're saying. How long ago? When was that first flight that Crow provided to Thomas? Oh, you need a ride to the whatever? I can't remember what it was. Aha. Private jet trip 1997. So yes. Okay.
Okay. 97.
97 is the first time we have Thomas reporting receiving a private jet trip from Crow. So it does go back that far. So yes.
Well, you know.
By 2005, when this case came before the Supreme Court, yes, definitely, Thomas had received stuff from his very good friend.
Well, that's interesting and fun and convenient. And yeah, I guess now we'll have to. We'll see if we can ever learn something about the nature of the 2005 case and when was it brought, and was there ever any indication? Was there any indication that maybe this was a shaky case that needed to be viewed in a certain light in order to succeed? But I've had 3 years to converse with the Supreme Court justice about whether or not we can move doctrine in that direction. I don't know. But, you know, it's enough that this is, that this relationship was
and so
in
that
existence.
this relationship existed, that Thomas had, at the very least, a close relationship with this person, and that Thomas had to recuse. We know, basically, this guy is a good friend of mine. I need to recuse.
Yeah, I mean, at minimum,
Period.
right? This guy is a good friend of mine, and I've never gotten a damn thing from him in my life that could even approach the idea of bribery and corruption. But as everyone knows, this is a personal friend, and, they'll be difficult to consider their case, so I won't. And it's a real estate case. Eight justices can handle this just fine. They'll know what to do. But no, that's the problem with this guy.
That's the problem.
Is he says, let me just sneak in there and see if I can. And you know how the justices work and make their decisions, and they confer with each other on that. And, depending on how, I don't know whether, Clarence Thomas is a master of subtlety or anything like that. I don't think so.
And until he got back into a Trump-backed majority, he didn't even talk. So no.
That's true. And what we did know that he said before he was on the court was mostly about the movies he was watching. And
yes.
That's not really subtle either. Did anybody see that? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, he's a bad guy, generally speaking, and deserves all the scrutiny. However, we're still stuck wondering what's really possible in a Senate that isn't 2/3 Democratic.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, but as you said, I think, the importance is that if his wayward ways are enough to turn up the heat under other justices who may or may not have done things similar or things that shouldn't really be a big deal but are now looking like a big deal because of this jerk who won't shut
and
up.
They are, and that includes Roberts.
Yeah, right.
There's been lots of reporting about his omission of reporting his wife's income. His wife, who happens to be a top recruiter of white shoe lawyers.
Yes, right. That's right.
End up arguing before the Supreme Court.
Yes. You can land a very lucrative job in a very lucrative firm if you happen to be close to the Chief Justice's wife, and who
happened to headhunt you for that position. Yes.
So all of this, I guess, really, honestly, is, while we're always in favor of more disclosure for lots of reasons, part of the lifetime tenure thing and the difficulty in removing you is supposed to be a shield that's supposed to make you not frightened to disclose things that at first blush might be like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to answer some questions about this. Yeah, sure. In exchange for like the ultimate power and being one of 9 people to decide what the law actually is in this country, and even stand it on its head and reverse 50, 100, 200-year-old precedent if necessary, is, yeah, you'll have to be honest about these things. But don't worry so much. You've got a lifetime appointment, and it's extremely difficult to get rid of you. So just tell the truth and get it out there. And they still won't do it.
Exactly. They've got nothing to lose by it. You know, they're not going to be impeached.
There's no elections for you. You don't have to stand for election. They're never going to get the 2/3 on you. So.
And when they don't disclose, that means, or at least that implies, that they think it's a little bit hinky what they're doing.
Yeah.
They think, maybe this doesn't look so good in the light of day, so maybe I just shouldn't report it.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the exact opposite of what all of these protections are supposed to result in. And if we can't get those answers, then, yeah, well, at the minimum, all you can do is turn up the heat and say, well, if everybody has something fishy in their background, then either, I don't know what to do. I guess you could say, throw the weak link off the court. Agree and say, you know what, you should jettison this guy. Tell Republicans to vote to impeach him, and then you'll look good by comparison. But they don't have that play, and they want his vote, and they like being able to do what they want to do. It's just, I guess as a constitutional system, it appears to have failed to deliver the thing that it was supposed to guarantee, which I would then encourage people to say, well, obviously that should enter into your thinking about whether or not 9 is enough, or whether you should be imposing an ethical standard on them in some way or whatever. But all the thing that the designers of the Constitution said we were going to be guaranteed as a result of the protections they built in is not being delivered. This can't have been the intention of the founders. Yes, secret bribery for the Supreme Court. I'm sure they didn't mean that.
Well,
okay, that's true. You say, well, but they couldn't possibly have meant that you could own other people to do all your work for you. Oh, they did. Oh,
yeah.
I guess they were odd ducks.
They couldn't possibly have meant to leave women entirely out of the system.
I guess.
Maybe.
All right. We'll have to grant that these people are problematic and were disordered thinkers after all. So, okay. But now we say we don't want those things, right? We're all in agreement about, some of you are not in agreement about that too. Huh? Wow. All right. Well, that's some retrograde thinking, but, all we can do is say we should not be standing for this, and that there is a political party that appears to want to stand for that, and to the extent that you oppose it, you're going to need to oppose them. So I guess we're in that business too.
We're in that business too. And here we are back with the Senate.
Oh,
here we are back with...
I knew we were in another business as well. Yes, legislative branch.
With Dick Durbin's extreme reluctance to actually do anything about anything, including just the minimum of getting rid of blue slips.
Yes.
Including saying, really, Senator Feinstein, you have served us valiantly, you have served us well, we honor you, but it really is time.
Yes.
Somebody's got to say that to her.
Yes.
And the person who has served side by side with her on the Judiciary Committee for all of these years would be a good person to do it.
Yeah. It's a tough assignment, that's sure. And
it's a very tough assignment.
And they can't replace her, probably, either.
There would be a great deal more pressure on Republicans. Yes. And they are Republicans, and they are capable of doing anything, as we know. But it would be much harder to deny the seat to an actual Feinstein replacement, were she to have to leave for health reasons.
Or at least to someone. I mean, it's not always necessarily the case that your replacement gets your committee assignments, but someone would.
Yeah.
That's true. And although they would be willing to do it just the same way that they said we don't have to have hearings for a Supreme Court nominee, it would become an issue and an issue in elections. And again, people would say these guys really just don't operate the way, they don't do the Schoolhouse Rock thing and allow parties to have representation on committees, and they don't hold hearings for judges. They're weirdos and they don't operate like they're supposed to, and we hold them accountable. So, yeah, that would help, I guess, if she finally did step down. That would help clarify the issue.
It would help clarify the issue. It might not actually solve the problem of the Judiciary Committee, although Lindsey Graham went on a Sunday show this week and said, well, yeah, obviously if she had to resign and we had to bring a new member in, well, then we would look at it again. We can't just do this temporary thing, which of course they can do the temporary thing, but
do what they like.
But Graham says, no, we would look at it very differently if it was a replacement. And that is Lindsey Graham. Yeah. That does come with a massive block of salt, but.
Right. Yes, but then you would be able to point at it and say, he's terrible and he's a liar and a hypocrite. And everybody would say, we know that. But it would be another thing to do, I guess.
It does go beyond the Judiciary Committee, though, and judges. We do need that vote because there was a reason why we needed 51 votes. And one of those big reasons was Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
Who, this morning was on a Hannity bitching about how, Joe Manchin went on Hannity's show to say that President Biden has overreached entirely on the Inflation Reduction Act and its climate change stuff. And he's going to be there to stop it.
Okay.
However he can.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh. Well,
so, Joe Manchin declaring war on a Democratic president is kind of a problem for a 51-49 majority Democratic Senate.
Yes. All right. And so, it would be wise to have someone there who could show up and
who
vote.
Can be there.
Yeah.
Physically to vote. To vote against Manchin.
Yeah. I mean, and we were implored, in the last election, like this 50-50 thing is giving Manchin and Sinema too much power. Okay, 51 wasn't exactly what we were hoping for. We were hoping for more, but it changes the dynamic. And then Dianne Feinstein says, you know what? I think you should have that dynamic back. And it's going to be me that gives it to you. Okay, that's bad. We don't like that. And, I know it's complicated and delicate, but I mean, also we have been here before. Like, there were people who for a long time and faced the same pushback in doing so said, who ought to retire? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay. Delicate. I understand. Not in the same position exactly, but I see why, because you only get a certain number of chances to find a replacement. And, if it happens at the wrong time, very bad things could happen. And so, somebody might have said, maybe we should think about your timing, Diane. Maybe. But, all right. Wow, that's rough. I wouldn't want it to be my job, but then, what can you do? It is.
I mean, think about this. California is the most populous state in the country.
Yes,
has
it is.
Effectively one senator.
And 2 was never enough. So, they're down to 1. That's, yeah. Would this Supreme Court recognize the standing of a citizen who says, I am not getting equal representation? Not only, even if you had 2, I wasn't getting equal representation. Sorry, you're right, but the Constitution says you get 2. But I don't have 2, I have 1. Well, yeah, so, okay, they won't be any help. Don't go that route.
No, the Supreme Court will not be any help.
No, even if... All right. Anyway.
The Supreme Court, though, and this is sort of interesting, they've had an opportunity to take up yet another independent state legislature case coming out of Ohio.
What? Okay.
And they haven't.
All right.
So, I do think that the backlash to Dobbs, that all of the reporting of all of these ethical lapses, the cratering of the public's trust in the Supreme Court is having a little bit of an effect. It would appear that they are not going to go the route of something as crazy as the independent state legislature theory.
Well, that's,
So there's that.
That's good. And there's a good argument to be made there, right? And I guess that's the answer to all the people who say, well, you can't get an impeachment, so there's nothing matters. Well, I understand your frustration, but supposing we talked about how, endlessly about how terrible that is and turned up the heat on everybody, then they may, they'll never push him out. You won't be able to impeach him. Other justices won't resign, but they might at the margins say, you know what? Now's not the time for this.
Now is not the time. And then, I think that was the case with the Miffa-Priestone decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can understand that.
It's kind of extreme to say, no, the FDA isn't allowed to do its job.
Yes.
It was set up to do back in 1930, whatever. And we're going to step in and say, we know more than the FDA. Maybe now is not the time to be doing that.
If we were all, angels and in good standing and hadn't already reversed this, that, and the other thing and generated all sorts of backlash, they might have been able to sneak that one by. But, all right, so to the extent that they have to pick battles, this makes it harder for them to pick more extremely bad ones. They could just bulldoze right past us. But so far, they're not doing it.
Alito were willing to.
Yes.
On Miffa-Priestone.
Yeah.
So.
And they were always going to do that. But yeah, it's the rest of them that we have to worry. And eventually, they'll get to where they have 5 bulldozers, I guess. And then we, I don't know what you resort to at that point. But to the extent there's people who care about the reputation of the court, and there may only be 1 or 2 of them left, but that for the moment, that's enough, and that's where you can apply pressure. You're not going to be impeaching people, or you're not going to be expanding the court anytime soon. Push for it, yes, but that's one of the things they want to head off is by saying, well, we're not that crazy, so you don't need to expand the court after all. And, okay. I mean, that doesn't mean that we agree that it's not time to expand the court, but it's a small victory along the way. And I guess people
if we can modify their behavior at all, it's worth raising hell on all of this stuff.
I guess
clearly.
So. Okay, I like that line of thinking. Although I guess then there would be others who would say the accelerationists who say no, let them be as radical as possible. But people suffer in the meantime, and I think we've granted some reprieves for some pretty important concerns, or we've seen the court, for whatever reason, agreed to grant these reprieves. It may have nothing to do with the pressure, but it might. It's hard to read.
It might.
And okay, but now I get you. So it makes good sense, and it's as hard as the work is, everyone should stay active and keep up that pressure.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's kind of fun now to think that everybody and their dog in the traditional media is there delving through financial reports.
Yeah.
The disclosure reports from Supreme Court justices. That's helpful.
It is. And it's interesting. These are all things that we just sort of figured were correctly filled out, I guess, at some point. Yeah. But
I mean, no way Politico goes to look at Gorsuch's disclosures if we don't have all of this reporting on Thomas.
Yeah. Because they didn't when they had the chance. Nobody did. He wrote this thing out and he left the line blank and nobody said, why is this blank? Or maybe somebody did. I could go back and look at the hearings. But again, that was the theory. Is like if you spent your 5 minutes on TV saying, why is this line blank instead of what about abortion? People would have been saying, what's wrong with you? Focus on the big stuff. You know?
The sale didn't happen until he was confirmed.
Oh, okay. Well, there you
So
go. There's
that
another
didn't
good
come
reason.
up in Senate hearing.
But, yeah, or
In Gorsuch's case.
Okay.
But,
even so, in regular oversight hearings, that right, if it's not focused on the Supreme Court and a Senate aide comes and says, this is blank, Senator. Even good senators are like, yeah, well, that's not what we're doing today.
Well, there's our friend Kaczmarek, the abortion pill guy from the beginning,
Yes.
who is also proven to be a non-disclosure of his main source of his wealth.
Yeah, but right in the middle of his own confirmation was lying about that. He changed the name on the articles that he submitted. Wasn't disclosing his financial relationships, and now has got even Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski big mad. Now.
Yeah, because wow, how could I possibly have known how extreme he was being on abortion and gay rights?
Yes, despite his reputation for being that way. But also then he wrote a bunch of articles saying, I'm extreme, and then said, oh, you know what? Take my name off of that. Somebody else is extreme, not me. Okay. Well, yeah, this is overall good reason to consider him, keep pushing on these things, and all sorts of things are being discovered, just as when you came on, right? Checking into Wendy Rogers' residency in Arizona, probably only happening because people found out about residency cover-ups in Tennessee as well.
Right, exactly.
So, and everywhere. We have Hawley, right? He doesn't live where he's supposed to live either. Why is all this happening? Why are we finding these things out? I don't know. Why were we investigating them when nobody has to resign? I don't know. But
there is that.
Turn up the heat everywhere, and somebody has to give something and somebody. Thank you. I appreciate it. You wrapped that up nicely.
I think you did.
Oh, right. Well, but you were here, and I wouldn't have done it without you. Thank you again for coming by. I appreciate coming and hearing from you every Tuesday. You're sounding better. That's good.
It's slowly but surely. I finally procured antibiotics, so we're getting there.
Well, outrage is nursing you back to health. That's good news. Thank you, Joan. We'll check in with you again. You'll be Superwoman by next week, I'm sure.
With David Waldman.
Take care. All right, time for us, therefore, to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He's got a lot of wonderful things planned for you, and he's laid them all out for you. But I wanted to talk to Joan for a little extra second, and so it's going to be a mystery. But I guess Tucker Carlson, I'm betting, will be part of the plan. Stay tuned.